Okay, so the system's a modular system, and what that means is that each of these menus that you see drop down is a module in its own right, but the modules all talk to each other. So when the debtors, for example, has a sale go through, you do an invoice, it's going to push the information across to the general ledger, so your P&L report fully reports it. The operational modules are the debtors and the inventory, because it relates to what you do when you trade, when you sort of sell to others. And for people in the construction industry, the job costing module would also be in operations. I won't cover that today. I'm going to stick with the core retailing aspects of our system. The accounting modules are made up by the general ledger, the cash book, and the creditors system. The creditors system kind of bridges across both a little bit, because when we raise purchase orders in here to suppliers, and then we receive those purchase orders in with this menu, then ultimately we then convert that purchase order into an invoice in here, and all of those things together tie back into the way the stock system works. So that's the way the modules all hang together. We'll actually start with the stock system. The method when I do training is to say to people, when you do a sale to someone, there's 2 or 3 elements to being able to do a sale. The first one is we need to set the debtor's account up, so they need to have an account in the system, or it might be a cash sale on a cash account. The second aspect is what we're going to sell to those people. So we would have the actual stock that we're going to sell them. And then the third part of the process is to actually tie those 2 things together and to create an order or a quote or an invoice or whatever the transaction might be. So I'm going to talk about, first of all, the stock side of things. The system's geared for plasterboard in the sense that, and I might say that the stock that you're seeing in here is just our demo data. It doesn't have any real resemblance to any accurate pricing necessarily or anything like that. It's just purely for the purpose of covering the way the system works. So don't get too hung up on the values. But you've got a code. The code can be up to 20 characters long and must be unique. You've got a description which can go to about 90 characters, although when it becomes when it gets put onto an order or an invoice or a quote, it becomes unlimited, and we'll come to that shortly. The stock lives into a stock group, and the important part in terms of the plasterboard industry is that the scalar here represents the number of square meters in that product. So as we look at the price down here, you'll see that this price is a square meter price, so that would be a square meter purchase. Yep. And then we've got a square meter price for the selling. And when it comes time to using that item on a docket, on a sale to a customer, or a quote, an order, the square meters price gets multiplied by the number of square meters on that actual product, which we call the scalar. And then that translates it up to what the customer is actually going to pay for it. So this particular product here, which is your 1200 sheet wide, 3 meters long, 10mm recessed edge, if we go to the next product, you can see this one's 3.6 long. This one's 4.2 long. Each of these products are in the same family, if you like. They've all been put in a group called PB 10mm, and they all have a similar price, but the scalar, the square meters, is changing for each one. Now, if I go flicking through a few more and we get into a 1350 sheet, you'll see here that the scalar now reflects the fact that the sheet is 1350 wide, not 1200 wide, but the pricing might well be the same because we're still dealing with the 10mm board. And again, if I go flicking through and I found another one, 13mm for argument's sake, the pricing will have changed because it's a thicker board. And the stock group's also changed. So that's some of the specifics that relate to the system in terms of the plasterboard. I am going to run through each of these tabs quickly as well and talk about the stock more holistically, but that's some of the things that relate to. You can double click on the stock code here to find any given code, and as you type in, the system will try to find those particular items. You can press OK and it'll go to that item. You can use your arrow keys as I was before. You can also search by description and stock group and other things. So if I went into stock group mode for argument's sake and I type in the word angle, I can press the sorry, I meant description then. If I type in the word angle, searching by description, I can press the F4 key, and now I'm going to see all the stock in the system that's got the word angle anywhere in it. So there's various methods of finding the stock lines, but certainly I suppose the stock code would be the most efficient if you actually knew that straight away. Working across the other elements of what makes up a stock record, we have a discount structure. So we have 6 sell prices, six standard sell prices for our stock. You can actually have any customer set up on any specific price for any item or any group, and we're going to come to that shortly. But in terms of a retail price list, this is like saying that this 532 is the top sell price, and if we gave them 2.7% off that, it would be 518, 5% off would be 505, and so on for each of the 6 discount levels that are available. So the top price is the base price, and then we discount down from that base price. So we can have 6 price levels per stock line, but we can actually have any structure of pricing control on an actual customer's account, and we call that agreed pricing or contract pricing. So there's 6 price levels for, if you like, off the street, but for when we start to talk about actual customers, we're not limited by those 6. We've got an unlimited number of pricing options, and I'm going to come to that in just a moment when we talk about the customer's account. In terms of suppliers, we can have an unlimited number of suppliers. Now, I've actually got this database, it's actually been set up for warehousing, but I'm not running in a warehousing mode, so this isn't presenting cleanly. But if you can just imagine the, just ignore lines, the additional line 1s, the additional line 2s, and the additional line 3s for a moment. What we can do is we can actually set up a supplier against any given product. We can note the supplier's code, the agreed price that we purchase those goods from them, or we could even put in a list price and the percentage we get off the list price. And we've also got volume control with our pricing. So we might have a supplier who might sell us, if we buy 100 of them, it's a certain price. If we buy 1,000 of them, it's a different price. We can handle that in our supplier setup. When we come to the purchase ordering screen shortly, this is where it ties back. This is where the information with regards to purchasing product from our suppliers derives its knowledge from, and I'll refer to that shortly when we talk about suppliers, rather purchase orders. The stock movement tab, it shows us all the buying and the selling and the stock adjustments. All the actual movement of this item that's ever occurred shows up in here. As you can see, my demo database has been around for a long time. We've got transactions going back for quite some years, but the blue ones are my purchasing, and the red lines are the selling. So here's where I've purchased in item from a supplier, and here's where I've sold item to another, to a customer. And across to the right here, it has different information in terms of the comment, the delivery info. If it was from a supplier, we get the purchase order information that came with it at the time. Get a bit of a running balance for the stock. The manufacturing stuff not so applicable, and a bit of posted information that came through. So that movement screen allows us to find things. We can also filter that, so I can look at all the data. I could look at the last 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, or I could just look at only purchases, sales, stock adjustments. At the moment, I'm showing all entries for all types of entries in terms of time frame and types. Stock on hand, there's just a bit of brief information there with regards to the stock line. You might have things like supplier pack quantity, so you order in a pack of 60 or a pack of 100, that sort of thing, and sell it by the each. We can handle that sort of thing. The reorder levels, we can have automated reordering of stock when the warehouse hits a certain level, how many we'd like to automatically reorder at that point in time. When I say automatically, the operator is still in control. It's just that the system's going to do all of the calculations as to the quantities that are required. Stock kits, I won't spend too much time on stock kits, but we have the ability to assemble certain products together to represent another product. And the example I normally use is where an item is put with other items, for example, a suspended ceiling, you might have certain hooks, you might have tracks, you might have your tiles. All of those things together represent what's required to put a suspended ceiling in. In that example, we could work out the amount of tracks, the number of tiles, and the amount of hooks required for a square metre, and then we could actually just key in the total number of square metres of the ceiling, and the system would work out exactly what was required to actually fulfil that order. So that's an example of a stock kit and how you can use an assembly type approach. It also is used in manufacturing, but that's not part of our demo today, so I won't go down that track. We can have images set up against our stock lines if applicable. Some people have online presence and put the information into the system, and that way they don't have to double handle things. Handful of additional extras. One thing I want to talk about is this prompt note field. If we put a prompt note against an item, every time an operator goes to use that item to either put it on a customer's order or to do a purchase order from a supplier, the system will prompt them with that information that's been keyed in. So it just gives you a trigger alert to interact with someone. And then the last tab here is the pricing history. Every time an alteration is made to the costs or the sell structures, we actually store it in a pricing history audit log. So if there's ever a desire or a need to go back through and look at the pricing history of an item, might be that something's gone wrong, the prices are wrong, and so you want to have a look at when that happened and how it happened. Or it could be that you've deliberately made some changes and you're just looking back over the audit trail. So going fairly quickly, but that's our stock maintenance setup area, where we would actually set up all of the information that relates to the products that we sell. The one other thing worth mentioning in this area is this notion of stock groups. And I can get into the stock groups by dropping the inventory menu down and choosing groups. And the stock groups serve two purposes. It allows us to collate product of a similar nature together. For example, the one we were looking at before was that 10mm plasterboard. And once we have collated items of a similar nature together, we can now report on them, so we can get a volume of sales of that item's group. And we can also control our general ledger postings such that the income goes to the general ledger in the right spot and the purchases go to the general ledger in the right spot. So it serves for two purposes. It's quite important for both of those. The other place it interacts with this is in the customer's pricing, and I'm actually going to go into that now. But I just wanted to mention that all the items have to get put into a logical stock group, and it's rather important they're put into the right one. So everything we've talked about so far is under the stock maintenance screen. I just want to jump across temporarily to the debtor maintenance screen, where we set up new customers or we maintain our existing customers. So again, working from the premise that we can't do a sale until we've defined a customer and we've defined the stock we want to sell to a customer. This would be one of the things we would cover in training fairly early. As per most systems, a debtor master file or a customer master file, we've just got to capture all the appropriate information about that person such that we've got it on record. So all these details, things here which are fairly self-explanatory as you read down the screen. I'm going to work through these tabs also fairly quickly and cover off. I'm going to go a bit slower on a couple that are fairly important. The options tab, one of the things we can do is we can set up email addresses and whether a customer should be emailed by default. So for example, if I had an email address set up for the quote and a tick for emailing by default, when I put a new quote in for this person, the system will default to wanting to email that quote as a PDF document to that customer. And the same can go for invoices. We could actually automatically email the invoices out to the customer as they go. So if we put an email address in here, what will happen, .com.au, what will happen is when we get to the actual screen where we create orders or invoices or quotes, the system's going to interact with us and by default want to email, in this case, the invoice out to that email address. So I'll come back to that particular feature when we talk about the debtor order screen shortly. A couple of other things worth mentioning in this screen. We also have the ability to email out people all of their invoices at the end of the week, or we can do it at the end of the month with their statement, or we can do it when they're raised. So we're about efficiency, I suppose. If we can avoid printing it on paper and posting it, then we're inclined to want to do so. It's just it's more efficient, less expense. And there's various ways that we can accommodate emailing people invoices or other dockets as the system is trading. The contact details just allows us to capture various pieces of information. So you just got their name, a couple of phone numbers, email addresses. It's so you can deal with the different departments within the other organisations you trade with. Operational notes and prompt notes on the customer. Operational notes, as a distinction from accounting notes, is notes that relate to how we interact and trade with this person. So for example, they might say that the guys on their crew are not authorised to pick tools. So if they're not authorised to pick up the tools, then we could put that on operational notes. But if we're chasing them up for money and it's an accounting relating issue, then the notes would be better off in the accounting notes. So that's why we've got different kind of notes. There's actually a third kind as well called posted notes. So you can actually capture notes in here and we can insert specific kinds of notes, be it, following up for account overdue, that sort of thing as well. So I won't say too much about that. The manual covers those things very well and in good depth, but there exist lots of different ways to store notes about our customers basically. Moving through these ones reasonably quickly, the totals here is just the current state of the account. So we've got what's on order, the current, what they owe, the last payment, that sort of stuff, last purchase, etc. Directors, sometimes we need to capture the directors of the company for insurance and that sort of thing, so that's available there. Delivery addresses, going a little bit slower here, there's a bit more detail. We can set up as many delivery addresses on a customer's account as we like, and when it comes time to place an order, we can pick up one of those delivery addresses. In addition to that fact, we've got the ability to have against the actual delivery address special pricing. and we would call that project pricing. So if a customer said to you that they've just won a really big job and they're wanting to get a better price out of you for that job because of the volume that's going into that job, then we've got the ability to set up special pricing just for that project. Now, let me talk about pricing here in a general sense, and then I'm going to come back to the delivery and talk about the actual site pricing or project pricing. So, pricing in a general sense is that I can set up a stock group, and everything in that group will now go through at the price of dictated. So in this example, I've said that all of the products in the 10mm plasterboard group will go through at $3.90. Now there's 4 ways we can control the pricing for a customer. This only relates to this customer that we're looking at, okay? The first is that we can stipulate the price. The second method is that we could have a discount level less a percentage. So this would be like saying everything in the Fire 16 stock group is going to go through at discount level 2 as per the inventory file before, less 12%. So that becomes the price, less 12%. The third option is to not actually have a less amount in. So for example, I could say, okay, everything this person buys that's in the stock group called accessories, they get discount level 3. Even though normally they might be set up, for example, to trade on discount level 2. So this is the master discount level for this customer based on our inventory pricing control. But this information on this tab, the groups and the items on the pricing tab, it overrides the default. So the discount level here would give them 3. The fourth type of pricing control in here, and it's a little bit subtle and it's not often used, is cost plus percent. So if you had a trading relationship with a store, for example, where you said we'll sell to you at cost plus 10% and you can sell us at cost plus 10%, that would give us the ability to set up that it's cost plus percentage. The only other times you tend to see that would be perhaps for staff or for for people. It's a fairly rare thing to sell to a customer at cost plus percent, but that is supported as well. And to use that method, we would clear out the discount level and we would put in the actual percentage here. So now it's not about the discount level, it's a cost plus 15, whereas this one is discount level 2 less 12%. Again, all these things are covered very well in the manuals, so it's sort of in full detail. Jumping across, so I might just put this one back to the way I found it. Jumping across, this is about groups. So everything we're talking about here will control all the items in that stock group. When we talk about items, the system is now capable of putting a specific price in for a specific product. And an item will override a group, meaning, say we've gone and set up that the 10mm plasterboard is at a certain price, and what I'm about to do is probably not something people would do normally, but I could come in here and I could set up another product out of the 10mm plasterboard group, for example this one here, and I could actually make that a different price. So this one's at $3.90 for that group overall. We've now said actually this particular product, the 6 metre sheet, can be also at $3.65. The item overrides the price of the group, and then the group overrides the price that would be normally determined by the master selling level for that account. So in short, wrapping all of that up in a single sentence, there's an awful lot of pricing control around customers, and as a rule, you'll be able to achieve any level of pricing control for your customers that's required from your inventory system. That's the whole thing there. So just go back where we were before. The delivery tab here, what we can actually do is we can set up a delivery address or a project or a site job, and we can actually have pricing controls for groups and for items set up just the same way we did here. The difference is if I sell product to that project, they're going to get the project price. So the project price will actually override all the other pricing in the system. The last thing I want to talk about on this area is the postings, and this will make a bit more sense once we've done a few things in the system, but here is where every transaction that's ever gone on for this person's account shows up. So we've got our what we would call current and past, or current and history, as we sometimes call it. So every invoice credit for all of the sales, for all of the credits, and for all of the receipting, adjustments, payments, everything that relates to this customer is all in here. So I could right click on this and I could go preview, and that will bring up what this invoice was. So we can see there we've got an actual invoice in the system. This is just our normal demo type stationery, and that covers, and I used the grid, I put an upstairs and a downstairs type thing. So that is an invoice that was raised previously, and all the transactions forever on this person's account. We can also see the orders in the system for them. So there's quite a few orders that are in the system for this customer. Again, we could right click on those, we could produce an order or a dispatch docket, picking slip or a dispatch docket, or maybe a priced confirmation docket, all that sort of stuff. We can see quotes that are in the system. There's none on this person's account. And we can look at the details of any given transaction. So if I'm on this one and I press the details button, now I get to see the actual stock that was on that invoice. So it's like a screen version of the preview that we did a moment ago of the actual invoice itself. So once again, fair bit of open data analysis or interrogation that you can perform on the actual account itself. I won't talk about the job tab here because the system demo is outside the job system, it doesn't matter. And the last one here is a resource tab where you can actually create your own fields and store your own fields on all of your customers. So we can have alphanumeric fields, we can have checkboxes, dates, memos. Again, covered in the manual. I won't spend a lot of time talking about that right now. Suffice to say, despite all of the fields that we've got available to fill information in, if there was other fields you wanted to store in, you can actually create your own and store additional data on each person's account. So going at a rampant speed, that's our debtors system where we set up new accounts and we maintain existing accounts. Just quickly talking about the security model, you can have the system set up such that people can log in and see any given screen, or sometimes we can actually filter what they can see within the screen. So it might be appropriate that some people can actually get into the debtors system and look up account information, but they can't change things, so it's all read only. It might be applicable that they can look up some basic detailed information, but not the sort of extended information like pricing and history of trading and all that sort of stuff. So you might tick the view details tabs only, and it limits what they can and can't see. Some people may not have the right to create new accounts because you've got to go through a credit approval process. So they can look up things, they can alter things, but they can't create brand new accounts. We've got lots of levels of control in terms of who can do what in the system. It's all controlled through this user access screen. So the mode we were just running through then is I was in a mode where I've got full authority to do everything, but you can limit that back for different users to limit them as to what they can and can't do.